Our party has left the Emerald Loop Caravan Stop and have made their journey through the wilds of Jorhas and are at the gates of Bazzoxan. And I'm going to tell you what happened in our last session. So let's dig in. Welcome back, everybody. So in our last video, we planned for this session where we're traveling from the Emerald Loop Caravan Stop all the way to Bazzoxan, and my party has finally made it there. The journey is over, and it was a 3-session journey for us, which was quite a long time, and I think my players were ready to get there. So let's talk about what went well. The first thing is just that we finally made it to Bazzoxan, and I think my party is excited to get there. It's been a lot of journeying and travel isn't always super fun, but I think in the book there are enough encounters to mix things up a little bit. You've got battle, you've got some social, and I threw in, Henry the Hare. We talked about that in a last video, but switching things up a little bit, I think that all went really well. The other thing that I feel like went really well is adding Omen as an encounter. That's straight from the book. Just in the middle of the night, they're set up camp. One of the people was taking watch, and they just noticed out of the corner of their eye, Ruidus flash, and they are cursed for the next day. It actually added to the difficulty of the encounter the next day quite a bit, and we'll talk about that. But I felt like that went really well. What could be better? Travel was long, and I just think my party was ready to be done. So I kind of wish I would have sped this up a little bit, but, just make sure you're paying attention to your party, and you can ask your players straight up how things are going. All right, now let's talk about what actually happened. So day 8, they wake up, they're at the Emerald Loop Caravan Stop, and they kind of are getting amongst themselves, getting themselves breakfast, and they hear over towards the bonfire one of the little goblin children crying, and so they head over and ask what's going on, and Chespa can't find her favorite doll, and so will you guys help us look for it? So I had them tell me how they were going to go look for this. So one was going to do concentric circles, another one was trying to use his survival skills to look for footprints and things. So I had them make rolls that tied to the skills that they were telling me, and eventually they found it, and the goblin family is super happy and excited, and they give them the goggles of night as a reward. After that, they didn't spend a ton of time. They kind of just milled about, were ready just to get on the road and get going. So they just kind of looked around the camp, saw who was there. They weren't super interested in sticking around very long, so they just took off and went and didn't have any of the interactions with the NPCs. And that's totally okay. It's a little bit of a bummer as a DM because you get excited for those types of things, but if that's what your party wants, so be it. Totally fine. Day 9, they ran into the crashed wagon encounter, and they found the key in the lockbox in this. They were super curious as to what happens, like looking for dragons. My party, for some reason, thinks that there's dragons in the wilds of Jorhas because of the first encounter where they ran into a gloomstalker. And ever since then, they've just been convinced that there's a dragon somewhere out here. So they thought maybe it was that. They weren't really sure. Spent some time investigating the wagon, and eventually they found the lockbox and got the potion that was in it. They don't know what it is, but they have that potion, and they'll be able to hopefully find out once they get to Bazzoxan what's in there, because it's a potion of hill giant strength, which is pretty awesome. Day 10, all day pretty uneventful. I tried to make the days fairly uneventful. They ran into people as they were crossing, but nothing super exciting, right? You just kind of explain the scene, the barbed fields, and you ran into a couple of people on the road. It's not really well traveled in my version of the game. At the night, they all put up camp. We have them take turns. I think Iris was the first one to take a watch, and then Jimmy took the second watch, and he was the one that rolled perception and saw Ruidus flash, and the party was cursed for 24 hours. They didn't really know what had happened. He woke up in the morning and just said, hey, have you guys ever seen this? He drew pictures in the sand of what had happened. Anybody seen this? Nope, I have no idea what that is. So this is day 11, where this is all happening. Jimmy's talking to everybody about what happened in the night, just thought it was interesting and cool, and then they run into the Aurora Watch Patrol, who is in the middle of a battle with a Hezrau. The battle has been going for a little while. They saw it as they were approaching. They could hear it. The Auroran Watch soldiers at this point in time were really low in health. They came to the aid of the soldiers, but by the time that they got to the fight, most of the soldiers had been killed by the Hezrau. I just had them biting off heads because I felt like they were low HP, and I wanted to challenge my party a little bit. I feel like it's been a while since they got a real good challenge. So he killed all of the Auroran Watch pretty quickly. Then, due to the curse from Ruidus, my party, especially Dmitri, our little gnome fighter, had a tough time because it's close range combat. The Hezrau has an ability where if you start your turn within 10 feet, you have to make a save. If you don't, you're poisoned, so then your attacks have disadvantage. Dmitri had a tough time, and some of the others did as well because of the curse from Ruidus, right? So that curse means it so that any ability checks or saving throws are done with disadvantage. So some of the other players didn't have as bad of a time, but Dmitri, it seemed like almost every time, failed their save on the poison check and were poisoned. So it was hard. The encounter went pretty brutally for my party. Our Chozen, our barbarian, got knocked down twice, below 0 HP, was revived both times. Jimmy, our druid, got knocked down once, and I think most of the party took a decent amount of damage. The exception to that is Iris, and that's because she's our warlock. She fought from a distance. She used her bow to try and attack this thing. The resistances and things that the Hezra has made the fight pretty difficult. I feel like my party had fun, but I also feel like, they were pretty nervous there at the end as Chozen was falling and Jimmy was falling. But eventually, they were revived. They also Iris managed to spare the dying on one of the Aurora Watch soldiers. She got there in time. They were able to revive another before he failed his death saves. 2 of the soldiers survived. They tried to revive a third, and he had already failed his death save, so that didn't work out. But they were able to talk with the soldiers. One of them's name's Kent, and they got some information from Kent about Bazzoxan and about... This is where some of my secrets and clues came out. As they were traveling, they traveled with Kent, and the other Aurora Watch soldier doesn't have a name yet. That's fine. They traveled from day 11 all the way to Bazzoxan, which is only another day or 2. They didn't run into any more encounters because they had the Aurora Watch soldiers with them who knew the area pretty well and could get them there quicker and safely. Some secrets and clues came out. We talked about just Bazzoxan itself and whatnot. That Varen Thalis is the head of Bazzoxan. Talked about how it was a dark temple, how it all started, how Bazzoxan came to be. We talked about it being under martial law, that there's researchers and treasure hunters there. And those are all things that Kent discussed with them as they traveled. And we just we didn't do like a super roleplay thing. He just is like, hey, here's what Kent let you know on the way from where you met him all the way to Bazzoxan. Here's some of the things that you discussed are now worth noting. So you don't have to roleplay every interaction that you have with the NPCs. I feel like it went really well. It got us from where we were with Kent and the Auroran Watch soldiers all the way to Bazzoxan. They traveled. They were able to do so safely. And I feel like it went really well with my party. And then when they got to the gates of Bazzoxan, they hit level 5. And they are excited to do so. So Chozen, our bugbear barbarian, and Dmitri, our gnome fighter, both get an extra attack, as well as, everybody else gets their abilities as well. So pretty exciting stuff. I'm really looking forward to see what happens in Bazzoxan. We'll talk about our prep for that and how we're adding things and changing things to the book in Bazzoxan. I feel like it needs a little work. And we'll talk about that in the next video. But until then, thank you guys so much for watching. I do appreciate it, and we'll catch you in the next one.